Hello, this is your friend Olufemi. It's been a minute. Welcome back. The last time we met, we talked about my talkative child, and basically, the story behind that her being a talkative child is the fact that sometimes we label our kids with some negative connotations or say, "Oh, she talks too much. She's too stubborn." Where in actuality, if we really try to work on those things that we term negative, we never know. Maybe this is what God wants to use to break them through. This is what God wants you to say. This is the path that you'll walk in life. That was what we discussed 2 weeks ago. Today, we'll talk about owning our heritage. As Africans, I've found out that a lot of times we know we're from Africa, but then when we get to the West, we throw all of our heritage away. We don't raise our children with the culture. We don't talk to them in the language. We want to be Americanized. We want to be Londonized. We want to be Canadianized. Um, we truly didn't do that in my house. We raised our kids in a traditional way. They speak the language, albeit they may not speak it fluently, but they do speak the language. But I'll tell you a story. I personally thought that we had exposed our children to a lot of the culture until a family friend of ours, they moved from Baltimore. And at the time, this was, I think, the year 2013, I believe. Their youngest was 3 years old. And I went to the house and I knocked on the door. Co. Yeah, she was the one that opened the door. And Miss Stein just got on her 2 knees. I just about died. I was like, what? This 3-year-old girl got on her 2 knees. She knew the culture. Honestly, right there and then I told myself I was going to go home and raise my kids because, yes, we did raise them with the culture, but at that time we hadn't raised them to say, whenever you see an elderly person, make sure you greet the right way. Because in our culture, we're Yoruba, we do kneel down or you do prostrate. So, and that was what we did with our children to the extent that in the morning, the way they greet us, Eka Aroma, on their knees. No, not necessarily on 2 knees, but they do go down, Eka Arosa. That's how they greet us, and they still do that today. And honestly, a lot of times I think we don't pay attention to it. We're raising kids. It's kind of disappointing to know that some people that raise their children in Nigeria, their children don't even speak the language. These are Yorubas or maybe Igbos that raise their children in Nigeria would just speak English to them. And I find it, like I said, disappointing because I feel like some of that culture is lost even in Nigeria. And I also believe that when we raise them with our culture, raise them speaking the language to them, there are so many things that you pass along. For example, honestly, because I raise my kids speaking the language when we're out in public and I want to discipline them, I don't discipline them in English. I discipline them in the language because the next person won't know what I'm saying to them. When we're in the store and they act out, I might just look at them a certain way. They know what that means. Or honestly, I'll tell them, I'll take you in the bathroom and I'll pinch you. Sometimes I even pinch them, because raising kids is no walk in the park. And if we don't do a good job at raising our kids, because in future, it means that in future, there'll become issues, there'll become problems for us, the parents. And one thing I would tell my kids when they were younger, when they'll say, oh, this person's mom did this, that person's mom did that, I'll tell them, those people are not my kids, and that person is not your mom. God gave me the responsibility of being your mother. I don't want to get back to God and God is asking me, why did you not raise them this way? Or why did you raise them this way? And I'll be like, So the way I felt God wanted me to raise them, the tools that I felt God had given me to raise them, I was going to use those tools wisely and raise them. A good example, honestly, when the older ones were older, we've never had cable in my house because I just thought that I was raised in Nigeria. TV would come out at 4 p.m. We didn't even have the opportunity to watch TV because we came home with a lesson teacher. I think we only had 30 minutes to play back then. By 7:30, we were in bed. So I wasn't used to that. So maybe because of that, but the older ones only got 30 minutes each of TV a day, but they could share. So in other words, they had 1 hour of TV. And again, we didn't have cable. A lot of shows I didn't let them watch. They watched PBS a lot. And we still talk about those Arthur shows, um, Something Train, The Big Red Couch. We still talk about those shows today. I didn't let them read, what's that book? The Bewitched, the book with the witch. I just feel like raising kids is a lot of responsibility, and a lot of us don't see that as a being a mother, being a father is a lot of responsibility. And I think that we just go through life thinking, oh, I'm going to do it this way. But I honestly think that if we realize that this is something that God has placed us with, we need to do it wisely and we need to do it effectively so that we raise healthy adults, not just kids, of course. We're raising kids that are growing, they'll one day become parents. So I think that we have to look into the future. And honestly, this is another phrase I would tell my kids when they were younger. Life is hard, and life is hard. So if I spoil them today, or if I don't do right by them, I'm not helping them against their future. So I also, at the back of my mind, thinking how I was raised, there's some things that I always say in our culture that I didn't like, or some of the ways that I was raised that I didn't want to raise my children that way. And I would say, God, give me the grace to do right by these children. So, in other words, I'm saying when we come from Africa, East Africa, West Africa, South Africa, wherever we come from, and we move to the West, let's try to hold on to our heritage because that's really a lot. Where do these children come from? Even African Americans, the family members, the generations of slaves that were brought from Africa, it's daunting to them to know that they don't have a heritage. Where do I come from? So we know where we come from. Please let's pass that along to our children. Thank you for coming along today. We talked about holding on to our rich heritage and passing that rich heritage to our children. Thank you for coming along. Don't forget to hit the like button, the share button, the subscribe button. See you next time. Bye. God bless you.